You are seeing this because you have reached a threshold that most people never realize they are approaching. Something inside you has been shifting quietly, almost invisibly, and yet you can feel it in every part of your inner world. It is the kind of shift that does not announce itself with dramatic signs or external events. Instead, it spreads through subtle sensations that you cannot fully explain. A heaviness that comes and goes without reason. A strange clarity that appears in brief flashes. A sense that you are standing on the edge of something you cannot name yet, but can already feel. This moment marks the final stage before a silent quantum upgrade activates within you. You did not come across this message by accident. You arrived here because the energy within you has been building toward a point of release. You have been sensing it in the way your thoughts have changed, in the way your emotions rise and collapse in waves, in the way your old motivations no longer hold the power they once did. Something in you has been preparing without your awareness. A quiet restructuring, a recalibration of your internal field. You may have noticed yourself pulling away from old patterns even without trying. You may have felt your intuition growing sharper. You may have experienced moments of intense stillness, as if time slowed for just a few seconds, to show you something hidden between the cracks of your reality. These are not coincidences. They are precursors. They are the signals that appear only when your consciousness is approaching the activation point of a major inner shift. For most people, these signs go unnoticed. But you're not like most people. You feel things before they happen. You sense changes before they manifest. You recognize the pull of a new timeline long before it arrives in your physical world. And now as you sit here reading these words, you can feel the resonance. You can feel the truth vibrating beneath the surface of the message. Your silent upgrade has been building for longer than you realize, and you have reached the final sign. Over the past days or weeks, you have felt a series of internal sensations that you could not fully understand, but could not ignore either. These sensations were not random. They were the early signals of an energetic saturation that precedes every quantum upgrade. You may have felt an increasing pressure inside your chest or mind, unlike stress, but deeper, like a quiet internal expansion, pressing against the limits of your old identity. You may have noticed your emotions becoming more raw, yet more revealing, as if something within you wanted to show you what needed to be released. You may have found yourself withdrawing from conversations that once interested you, sensing that they no longer fed the person you are becoming. You may have felt moments of sudden emptiness spaces where your old desires fell away, leaving you with no clear direction, but an awareness that something new was approaching. These sensations often confuse the mind because the mind expects transformation to feel exciting or inspiring. But true transformation begins with dismantling. True upgrades begin with clearing. Before a quantum shift activates your system, releases everything that cannot align with your new frequency. This is the quiet storm you have been living in. The emotional waves, the internal restlessness, the strange lack of interest in old habits and roles, the feeling that your identity is slowly dissolving and reforming in the background of your awareness. These are the unmistakable signs that your old energetic architecture is collapsing so that a new one can take its place. The reason these signs feel subtle is because the upgrade happens silently. The reason they feel personal is because they are encoded for you specifically. And the reason you are seeing this now is simple. You have reached the moment just before activation. The final sign is recognition, and you are recognizing yourself in these words. There is always a moment before every major spiritual shift where the internal world becomes louder than the external one. You may not have noticed it at first because it does not arrive with drama or chaos. It arrives with a quiet tension, a subtle tightening in the unseen layers of your awareness. This tension is not anxiety, although the mind may try to label it as such. It is the sensation of reaching the edge of an old identity. Every quantum upgrade has a breakpoint, a moment where the old structure can no longer contain the expanding consciousness within it. You are at that breakpoint now. You can feel it in the strange in-betweenness of your days, as if you are hovering between two versions of yourself. The old version still functions out of habit, but the new version pulls at you from somewhere deeper, somewhere that does not speak in thoughts, but in recognition. You may have noticed that your routines feel thinner, almost transparent. You move through familiar tasks, but you feel less anchored to them. You feel more like an observer than a participant. This is because your internal frequency is rising faster than your external world can adjust. The life you built from your old consciousness is beginning to dissolve, not physically, but energetically. You begin to sense what no longer fits. You begin to feel the spaces where your old identity has already loosened its grip. You begin to experience days where everything feels strangely unreal, as if you are walking through a memory of your life instead of the life itself. This is the signal that the upgrade is close. When the external world feels slightly out of sync with your internal state, the activation phase is near. You are not breaking down. You are breaking through. You are not losing your sense of direction. You are shedding the version of you that needed direction from outside sources. You are entering the threshold where reality becomes malleable and identity becomes fluid. This is the point just before the quantum collapse into a new state of being. As the activation approaches, your energy begins to behave differently. What you once tolerated now feels heavier. What you once ignored now feels amplified. What you once accepted without question now feels misaligned. This happens because your field is becoming charged. A quantum upgrade is like an invisible saturation of energy, building quietly beneath the surface until the system has no choice but to reorganize itself around the new frequency. You may have felt waves of emotion rising and falling without clear cause. You may have experienced sudden bursts of clarity followed by periods of disorientation. You may have sensed an internal pull that you could not explain, a pull away from certain people, habits, or environments. These fluctuations are part of the charging process. Before an upgrade activates, the energy within you reaches a point where it can no longer remain distributed in the old pattern. It begins to gather, it begins to concentrate, it begins to push against the boundaries of your current identity. This is why you may feel pressure behind your thoughts, why silent moments feel louder than conversations, why your intuition has been speaking to you in ways you can no longer dismiss. Your system is preparing for a shift where the old energetic architecture is replaced with a higher configuration. This is why the upgrade is silent. The mind is not invited into this stage because the mind would interrupt it with fear and control. The upgrade happens beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath narrative. It happens at the level of your core frequency, and when the saturation reaches its peak, activation becomes inevitable. You have been feeling this in your own way, not dramatically, not obviously, but unmistakably. That heaviness you cannot rationalize, that clarity you cannot explain, that detachment you cannot ignore. These are the final waves before the shift. Your system is reaching the activation point, and you are closer than you think. There is a reason your upgrade has been unfolding in silence. The most profound transformations do not happen in the mind because the mind is too loud, too reactive, too invested in maintaining what is familiar. A true quantum shift does not allow interference from the intellect. It does not need approval or understanding. It happens in the depth where your spirit operates beyond language. That is why you were not given clear signs in the beginning. That is why you were not told exactly what was changing. The process needed to occur in the quiet spaces between your thoughts, in the stillness beneath your emotions, in the subtle movements of your energy field, where the mind could not distort it. Silence is not the absence of change. Silence is the environment required for change that is too delicate to be touched by fear. Your spirit has been reconfiguring itself beneath your awareness. Old emotional imprints have been dissolving. Old attachments have been weakening. Old narratives have been losing their grip. You may have felt this as a sudden loss of interest in things that once defined you. You may have felt it as a strange neutrality, where old triggers no longer provoke the same reaction. You may have felt it as a new softness inside your body, as if something heavy has been slowly lifting, even if you cannot name what it was. The reason the upgrade is silent is because noise belongs to the old version of you. The upgrade belongs to the new one. Silence is where your spirit can rewire without resistance. Silence is where the old identity cannot interfere. Silence is where your future self can step forward without the friction of your past beliefs. The quiet you have been feeling is not emptiness. It is preparation. You have not been alone in the silence, you have been transforming inside it. As the old layers dissolve, something remarkable begins to happen. Your future self, the version of you that already exists in a higher timeline, begins to pull you forward with increasing strength. This pull is not dramatic, but it is unmistakable. It appears in the form of intuitive impulses that feel more like remembering than deciding. It appears in moments where you know what to do without reasoning. It appears in the clarity that passes through you when your mind finally stops trying to control everything. Your future self is not a fantasy. It is a fully formed version of you that already embodies the upgrade you are stepping into. Quantum timelines do not unfold in a straight line. They collapse inward toward the version of you that holds the highest coherence. You are being pulled toward that coherence now. You may feel this pull as a sudden aversion to certain situations. You may feel it as a rising desire to change something fundamental in your life. You may feel it as a growing sense of misalignment with environments that once shaped your identity. These sensations are the gravitational force of your future self, drawing you into the timeline where your upgrade is already complete. This is why the old patterns feel heavier. This is why staying the same has become unbearable. This is why your intuition has been sharper, more insistent, less willing to be ignored. You are synchronizing with a version of you that vibrates at a higher frequency. And that synchronization is the mechanism that triggers the silent upgrade. The more you follow these inner pulls, the more quickly the activation completes. You do not need to know the entire path. You only need to recognize the direction, and right now the direction is unmistakable. You are moving toward a version of yourself that has been waiting for this very moment. As your future self pulls you forward, the final layers of your old identity begin to fall away. This is not a gentle process. It often arrives as a sudden disinterest in things that once motivated you, or a quiet resistance toward obligations that no longer feel aligned. You may even feel confused by how quickly you have detached from certain roles, relationships, or ambitions that shaped you for years. This detachment is not failure, it is completion. When a quantum upgrade approaches, your system begins clearing anything that cannot hold the new frequency. Old emotional patterns lose their power. Old fears lose their sharpness. Old desires lose their pull. What once felt important now feels strangely far away, as if you are watching someone else's memories instead of your own. This is the death of the old energetic framework. It is subtle but profound, and it often happens without you noticing the precise moment of release. You simply wake up one day and realize that something inside you has shifted permanently. You feel lighter in ways that do not make logical sense. Certain emotional reactions no longer appear. Certain insecurities no longer grip you. Certain stories you once repeated to yourself now feel irrelevant. This is not because you forced yourself to change. It is because the quantum field has already begun aligning you with the new timeline. Dissolution always precedes activation. Before an upgrade activates, your consciousness must detach from the structures built by your past self. This detachment can feel like emptiness or loss, but it is actually clearing the space for something far more coherent to enter. The parts of you that once kept you safe are stepping aside. The parts of you that once held you back are losing their authority. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the version of yourself that cannot cross into the next timeline. As the old patterns fall away, you enter a phase that feels like standing in a vast, silent space where everything familiar dissolves into stillness. This is the void between timelines, the place where the old reality has loosened its grip and the new reality has not yet fully formed. Many people mistake this phase for stagnation, depression, or confusion, but it is none of those things. It is a sacred transition zone where the quantum field reorganizes itself based on your emerging frequency. In this space, you may feel as if you are floating between identities. You might not resonate with who you used to be, yet you cannot fully see who you are becoming. You may feel disconnected from your routines, detached from certain people, or strangely neutral toward things that once triggered strong emotions. This neutrality is not numbness, it is recalibration. It is your system adjusting to the absence of old emotional charges. It is the moment where your consciousness expands into a state of quiet readiness. The void is a necessary part of every major transformation because it dissolves the illusion of control. Nothing feels stable in this phase, not because your life is falling apart, but because your identity is dissolving and reforming simultaneously. You may have noticed moments of profound silence within yourself, as if the inner world has stopped echoing with old fears and doubts. You may have felt a strange clarity emerging, even if it does not yet translate into action. You may have sensed that something unseen is preparing itself, aligning itself, drawing closer to the surface of your awareness. This is the exact space where the silent upgrade prepares to activate, and the deeper the void becomes, the closer you are to the moment of activation. Do not fear the stillness. Do not fear the emptiness. It is the womb of your new identity. It is the space where your quantum field synchronizes with the timeline you are about to embody. As you move deeper into the void, the first hints of activation begin to emerge. They do not arrive with intensity. They arrive with subtlety, like whispering waves of recognition moving through your system. You may have already felt them in fleeting moments when your mind goes quiet, and a peaceful certainty spreads through you without any identifiable reason. This feeling is not random. It is the frequency of your future self syncing with your present timeline. In the early stages, activation does not feel like transformation. It feels like familiarity, as if you are remembering a version of yourself you have met before but forgot along the way. This familiarity is the first indicator that the upgrade is beginning to activate. Suddenly, choices that once confused you become clearer. The internal noise that used to drown your intuition becomes quieter. You start seeing through illusions you once believed. You start recognizing patterns you once repeated unconsciously. These are the ripples of activation. They move through your emotional field first, dissolving heaviness and replacing it with a strange inner lightness. Then they move through your mental field, unraveling old narratives that held you captive. Then they spread into your energetic field, aligning you with a coherence that your system has been preparing to hold. Activation feels like an inner click, but not all at once. It flashes in small waves before stabilizing. A moment of clarity, a moment of peace, a moment of deep inner truth. A moment where you realize you no longer respond the way you used to. These micro shifts accumulate. They gather, they reinforce each other. And as they do, you begin to feel a quiet power rising from within you. Not forceful, not aggressive, but certain, as if your entire being has begun to remember its original blueprint. This is the sign that your silent quantum upgrade is no longer approaching. It has begun. Once the activation initiates, your internal world starts reorganizing itself around this new frequency. The old mental structures that once defined your identity lose their authority. You begin to respond to life from a place that feels more grounded and less reactive. You notice yourself pausing before falling into old emotional loops and choosing differently without trying. This effortless choosing is one of the clearest indicators that the upgrade is integrating. Old triggers feel muted. Old insecurities feel distant. Old fears feel transparent. You may still remember them, but they no longer shape your decisions. They no longer determine your sense of self. They no longer influence the way you interpret your experiences. This newfound internal stability is not something you forced. It is something that emerged from within you as a natural consequence of your energetic upgrade. You begin to sense that you are no longer fighting against your life, but flowing with it. Even challenges feel different. Instead of overwhelming you, they reveal information. Instead of generating fear, they produce clarity. Instead of shrinking you, they strengthen you. This shift is not psychological, it is vibrational. You are operating from a higher field of coherence, and this coherence naturally reorganizes your reality. You may not have all the answers yet, but you no longer feel lost. You may not see the full path ahead, but you feel guided. You may not know what is coming next, but you trust the movement of your inner world. This is the beginning of alignment. This is how the silent upgrade becomes conscious. The more you settle into this clarity, the more your external world will begin reflecting the shift. Not instantly, but inevitably. The internal reality always transforms first, and you are already inside that transformation. As the upgrade stabilizes within you, Something subtle but undeniable begins to shift in the way you inhabit yourself. You notice a new steadiness underneath your thoughts, as if a deeper intelligence is guiding you from within. You begin to feel more rooted in your choices, more aligned with your direction, more connected to a sense of inner truth that does not depend on external validation. This internal certainty is one of the clearest signs that your quantum upgrade is integrating. You no longer seek answers outside yourself with the same desperation. You no longer chase clarity. Instead, clarity arrives on its own, in moments where you are simply present enough to receive it. Your intuition becomes louder than your fears. Your awareness becomes stronger than your doubts. Your presence becomes more influential than your past. As this happens, you begin to see your life differently. Situations that once confused you now reveal patterns you had not noticed before. People who once drained your energy now feel easier to understand and navigate. Challenges that once overwhelmed you now feel like invitations rather than threats. These shifts are not signs that life is changing around you. They are signs that you are changing within life. The upgrade reconfigures the way you perceive reality, and because perception shapes experience, your entire world begins to reorganize itself around your new frequency. You may notice synchronicities increasing, guiding you with astonishing precision. You may feel a subtle increase in life force, a rising sense of purpose unfolding quietly inside you. You may begin to feel more like yourself than you have in years, not because you are becoming someone new, but because you are remembering the self that was buried beneath layers of conditioning. This is the essence of your quantum upgrade. It does not give you a new identity. It removes everything that is not your true identity, and what remains is the purest expression of your consciousness. You are stepping into a state of being that reflects your natural frequency rather than your learned patterns. This is what alignment feels like. This is what coherence feels like. This is what awakening feels like when it begins to settle into the body. Now that you have reached this point in the journey, there is something you can feel rising inside you. A knowing, a recognition, a quiet certainty that the shift you have been sensing is already in motion. You can feel that this message did not simply pass through you. It awakened something within you. The upgrade is not waiting for permission. It is not preparing to begin. It has already activated. The signs were inside you long before this moment. The stillness, the detachment, the inner pressure, the dissolving of old patterns, the clarity that arrives without thought. These were the signals that your spirit was aligning itself with a new timeline. And by recognizing them here, you have completed the circuit. You have reached the final sign. All that remains now is the seal, a conscious imprint, a declaration that aligns your present self with the frequency that has already awakened within you. To anchor this moment into your timeline, go to the comments and write the phrase, "I accept my silent quantum upgrade." This is not a gesture for the algorithm. It is a ritual for your consciousness. It is how you tell the universe that you recognize what is happening inside you. It is how you acknowledge the shift. It is how you stabilize the activation and allow the new frequency to settle fully into your reality. Breathe into your chest. Feel the resonance, feel the certainty. You are not waiting for the upgrade, you are living inside it now, and your new timeline begins here,